not slowly. All at once, the Tagus, one of the greatest rivers in Europe, was being sucked into the earth, exposing the muddy bottom, forgotten shipwrecks, rusted anchors from other centuries. Hundreds of meters of riverbed laid bare, as if someone had pulled the plug from an enormous bathtub, and people walked down into the mud to pick up silver coins. They didn't know what I knew. They didn't understand what it meant, and that ignorance killed them. What happened next on that morning of November 1st, 1755, killed 30,000 people, destroyed one of the greatest cities in Europe, shook the philosophy of an entire continent, and forced humanity to rethink its relationship with God, with nature, and with reason itself, all in less than 6 hours. But to understand the horror, you first need to understand the beauty. And to understand what Lisbon lost that day, you need to walk into that city with me. 2 hours before the world broke. The time was 9:40 in the morning, a moment frozen forever in the gears of my broken watch. Before that minute, I was a wealthy merchant concerned with my shipments of spice, 3 vessels loaded with pepper and cinnamon from the Orient, somewhere between the Cape of Good Hope and home. After that minute, I was nothing but a ghost covered in white dust. Walking over the bones of the city I once called home, I looked at my beloved Lisbon, the queen of the ocean, the beating heart of an empire that stretched its arms to Brazil, Angola, Goa, and Macau, and she was gone. In her place stood a burning skeleton. We didn't know it then, but we were standing in the wreckage of the modern world's first great tragedy. To understand the horror, you must understand the beauty. Lisbon that morning was a jewel. The sun rose over the Tagus River, painting the water in gold and copper. It was All Saints' Day, a holy day of rest and prayer. The city breathed with a devoted slowness, the church bells calling the faithful through the steep cobblestone alleys. And the faithful answered. Lisbon in 1755 was the 5th largest city in Europe, home to nearly 270,000 souls, a metropolis of violent contrasts. Tiled palaces beside miserable tenements. Religious processions sharing the streets with drunk sailors and enslaved people brought from Congo and Brazil. A city of superstition and immense wealth, living side by side, proud, loud, and utterly convinced of its own invincibility. The churches were packed. Every cathedral, every chapel was filled with the faithful lighting candles. Thousands of candles. Keep that detail in mind. It would become important later. Too important. I was walking to the Cathedral of Santa Maria. The air smelled of incense and roasted chestnuts. I remember seeing Mrs. Silva, the baker, arranging her pastries in the shop window. She waved at me. I waved back. It was the last time I ever saw her. Inside the church, the chanting was hypnotic. Sanctus, Sanctus, Sanctus. The stone walls felt solid, eternal. We felt safe in the house of God. Why wouldn't we? Lisbon was the heart of a global empire, rich with gold from Brazil pouring into the royal coffers in quantities that made the rest of Europe pale with envy. We were arrogant, and arrogance is blinding. Looking back, there were signs. The animals knew. The stray dogs had been howling all night. The birds vanished from the rooftops minutes before it happened, but we were too busy praying to notice nature holding its breath. I was kneeling when I felt it. Not a shake, but a vibration, like a heavy carriage passing by. But it didn't stop. It grew. The stone floor beneath my knees began to hum like a lute string pulled to its breaking point. The chanting faltered. Voices trailed off one by one. 1,000 heads turned up toward the vaulted stone ceiling at the same time. The air pressure dropped. My ears popped, and then the world broke. It wasn't a sway, it was a violent, jerking spasm, throwing everything sideways with an irrational fury. The stone floor rolled like the deck of a ship in a storm. People were thrown to the ground. The heavy oak pews slid like barges cut loose from their moorings. I looked at the priest. His face wasn't calm anymore. It was a mask of pure primal terror. He knew, we all knew. This wasn't just a tremor. The roar became deafening. The roof of the cathedral, tons of ancient stone carved across centuries, simply let go. It didn't fall. It rained death. I crawled under a heavy oak pew as the world turned grey. I couldn't breathe. The air was solid dust. I felt impacts around me, screams cut short, silenced with the brutality of a blade. In the darkness, I clutched my rosary until the beads cut into my palm. "Mercy," I whispered. "Mercy?" I scrambled out into the street. It was worse. The tall, narrow houses of Lisbon, those the poets called towers of dreams, were collapsing onto the people fleeing through them. The narrow medieval streets became long tombs. There was nowhere to run. The ground itself was furious. Great fissures opened up in the cobblestones, jagged mouths waiting to swallow us. I saw a carriage disappear into one, just gone, as if the earth had swallowed it whole. The shaking lasted for nearly 6 minutes. Do you know how long 6 minutes is? You can live a whole life in 6 minutes. You can say goodbye to everyone you ever loved. You can watch the world you knew be obliterated, stone by stone, memory by memory, when it finally stopped. The silence was worse than the noise. A thick, choking fog of lime dust covered everything. We were ghosts walking in a cloud. We thought the worst was over. How naive we were. We did what instinct told us. We ran to the open spaces, to the docks, to the Tejido do Passo, the great square facing the river. Away from the buildings still falling in sequence, like pieces of a collapsing domino chain. We ran to the river. The water will save us, we thought. The water is safe, but the river was disappearing. I had seen it already, and now the people who had been collecting coins from the exposed riverbed looked up and understood. Far too late, the river returned, but not as a flow, as a mountain, a wall of water 20 feet high, roaring like 1,000 cannons fired all at once. It smashed into the docks with the force of a god's hammer. The ships that were meant to be our escape were lifted up and thrown into the city squares like a child's toys in a fit of rage. Galleons and frigates flying over rooftops. Absurd real. I scrambled up the hills of Alfama with everything I had. I didn't look back. I only heard the impact, the sound of water crushing stone. The screams were silenced instantly, swallowed by the roar of the flood. Those who sought safety at the river found only drowning. When the water receded, it dragged the city with it. I saw a galleon sitting in the middle of the Rocio Square. A warship, stranded in the heart of Lisbon, surreal, a nightmare made real. I collapsed on the stones of snow, Jorge Castle, gasping for air. I was alive. I was high up. The water couldn't reach me here. I thought, it's over now. Surely, God has punished us enough. But remember the candles? The thousands of candles we lit for the saints on that pious morning. When the walls fell, they fell onto tapestries, wooden altars, and dry pine beams. A third beast was waking up. Fire. The wind picked up. The small fires joined hands and danced. Within hours, it wasn't just a fire, it was a firestorm. The oxygen was being sucked out of the air. The flames leapt from block to block as if the city were one giant fuse. Night fell, but there was no darkness. The city burned so bright you could read a letter at midnight, 5 miles away. It burned for 5 days. 5 days of slow total cremation. I watched my home burn. My warehouse. My memories. The Tejo Opera House, inaugurated just months before with great pomp and ceremony, vanished into ash. I felt nothing. I was hollowed out, like a vessel that had been shattered and glued back together. The shape still there, but empty of purpose. It wasn't just people dying. It was our history. The Royal Library, with illuminated manuscripts, unique maps of Vasco da Gama's routes, irreplaceable records of centuries of exploration, turned to smoke. Paintings by Titian and Rubens, which kings had acquired from across Europe at enormous expense, were devoured by the flames. The memory of the world was being erased, and we, powerless, could only watch. When the fires finally died, Lisbon was a moonscape of grey ash and black stone. We, the survivors, lived in tents made of ship sails outside the city walls. We were equal now, noble and beggar, sharing the same muddy water. Then came the hunger. And the wolves, human wolves, looters scavenging the dead, pulling rings from fingers still warm. Chaos threatened to finish what the earthquake had started. We needed a leader. We got a dictator, Sebastião José de Carvalho e Melo, the future Marquis of Pombal. While King Jose I took refuge in tents on the outskirts of Lisbon, too terrified to sleep under a stone roof again, Pombal stepped forward. When the desperate monarch asked what to do, Pombal reportedly answered with 6 words that echoed through history: bury the dead and feed the living. He was brutal. He erected gallows on the high points of the city, visible from everywhere. Looters were hanged immediately. He forced food prices down by royal decree. He seized the church's grain stores. He was a tyrant, but a tyrant who saved us from total collapse and anarchy. The priests cried that this was God's punishment for our sins. They demanded prayers, flagellations, processions of penance. Pombal wanted us to dig and build. It was a war for the soul of Portugal, fought between faith and reason, in the middle of the smoldering ruins of the capital. And he did something extraordinary, something no ruler had ever done in such circumstances. He sent a detailed questionnaire to every parish in the country. How long did the shaking last? Did the wells dry up? Did the sea recede before advancing? From which direction did the sound come? He wasn't asking God why. He was asking nature how. Without knowing it, in the middle of the ashes, Pombal was inventing modern seismology. We started to clear the rubble. Every stone was heavy with the ghost of who had lived there, but Pombal had a vision. No more twisting medieval alleys. No more buildings raised without rule or order. He drew straight lines. Wide avenues, a rational Enlightenment grid where organic chaos once ruled. He forced us to build differently. A wooden cage inside the walls, the Pombaline cage designed to flex with the earth instead of breaking. He marched troops across the floorboards to test them before anyone moved in. We were building a city designed to survive the end of the world. Should it come again? The seismic shockwave traveled far beyond the physical tremor. It shook the minds of all Europe. Voltaire wrote Candide, mocking the idea that we live in the best of all possible worlds. How could a benevolent God crush innocent children in a church, on a holy day, while they prayed? The question had no easy answer, and the discomfort of that impossibility forced the thinkers of Europe to grow up. Lisbon killed the naive optimism of the old regime. It forced humanity to question everything. In Portugal, the earthquake shook the throne of God itself. Pombal used the disaster to crush the power of the church, expel the Jesuits, and modernize education. The catastrophe became the catalyst for the Portuguese Enlightenment. Even a young Immanuel Kant, far away in Prussia, became obsessed. He wrote essays trying to explain earthquakes naturally, moving away from superstition. The disaster of Lisbon forced humanity to take a decisive step toward science and reason. Today, you come to Lisbon for the custard tarts and the sunny tiles. You walk on the beautiful black and white cobblestones, but look down. Really look. Beneath your feet are the bones of 30,000 people. Beneath the straight lines of the Baixa Pombalina lies the chaotic skeleton of the medieval city. We built the new world on top of the corpse of the old one. The Convento do Carmo still stands, but roofless. A scar we chose not to heal. A permanent reminder that the earth is only sleeping. My death came long ago. But my fear lives in the engineering of these walls. My grief lives in the fado music that echoes through the alleys of Moreira. That music of a torn soul that perhaps can only be born from a people who lost everything and survived in the same breath. Lisbon is not just a city of light. It is a city of survivors. Every stone in the Baixa has a story of fire. Every straight street is a monument to the dictator who saved us. We walk on history, mostly unaware of the price paid for the ground beneath our shoes. The Tagus flows calmly now. The tectonic plates, deep in the Atlantic, are locked in a silent embrace. But scientists say it will happen again. It's not a matter of if, but when. The fault line is still there, waiting. The earthquake of 1755 changed the world. It gave us seismic science, transformed European philosophy, and rebuilt a nation. But it cost a city. It cost 30,000 lives. It cost centuries of memory. Destruction is always like this, fast, blind, and indifferent. What defines us is not what we lose, but what we choose to build on the ruins. Next time you walk the streets of Lisbon, Listen to the silence between the sounds. You might hear us, those who saw the day the world broke. Light a candle for us, but keep one eye on the river. History is a cycle. Pain fades, buildings rise, but the earth remembers. And it will remind us, eventually. If this video made you see the past differently, then it did its job. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because every week we dive into a new era, a new moment that changed the course of humanity. There are centuries waiting for you. See you in the next one.